The National Museum of the American Latino is a dream that has been in the making for over 2 decades. Recently, funds have been approved to have it built in the National Mall in Washington, D.C. However, an exhibit that promised to be the guideline for the content of the museum made it come to a complete stop after Republican leadership described it as offensive. The man who spearheaded this battle, Republican Congressman Mario Diaz Balart, talks to me about how he was able to shift the project around, put it back on his feet, and his vision on how the Hispanics in the U.S. should be represented in the museum. Congressman Mario Diaz Balart in the Carlos Calderon Show. Congressman, I'm very, very happy and proud that you accepted my invitation. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
I'm here to talk to you about the National Museum of the American Latino. As you know, I've been working on the media for decades, and for me, it's always been very hard to come to a thread that unites all of the different groups. And this project seems to be such a challenge for that. There was such a broad coverage of how the project was stopped by your leadership. But little has it been said of what changed that made it come back to life again. Can you share with us what changed and what strategies did you use to achieve a unifying vision among leadership?
Yeah. Well, look, I've been supportive of that museum for almost as long as I've been in Congress. But I was horrified to see when they did this pre-exhibit how frankly insulting it was to all Latinos.
Yes.
To Latinos in the United States and also to the United States in itself. And it's interesting, what I first did, and it wasn't just me, one of the founders of that entire process, the museum, was former Congresswoman Ileana Ros-Lehtinen.
Yes.
She sent emails and texts saying this is unacceptable, really offensive. Let's figure out a way to start correcting it. And I did the same thing privately. I got in contact with the folks in the museum and the Smithsonian, and to make a very long story short, they totally ignored the situation. I actually then had a meeting with the Smithsonian, and their attitude was, well, sorry, no big deal. But I'm not willing to just stand by and let our community, the diversity of those communities, be insulted with taxpayer money. I'm not willing to do that. And so while others, including, by the way, if you look at the debate in the Appropriations Committee,
yes,
everybody, Republican and Democrat, agreed that it was an insulting, patronizing and quasi-racist
yes,
exhibit, unfortunately. Everybody agreed to that. But only a few of us were willing to do anything about it. And so what we did is, after I got, frankly, zero back from the Smithsonian, other than just saying, yeah, we understand it's problematic, but so what? In essence, deal with it. What I did then is, since I wasn't willing to accept it, because somebody has to stand up for our community,
yes,
I went as an appropriator and I defunded the entire museum. Once that happened, attitudes from the bureaucracy changed. Once we were able to show them that we would not stand idly while our community and our country is insulted, and we can talk a little bit more in detail if you like about why it was so incredibly offensive.
yes.
But once they realized that we were not going to just stand idly by, or frankly, just give it lip service, jarabe de pico,
Sí.
and frankly not do anything. Once they realized that we were willing to really stand up to the point of defunding it, attitudes changed. We had a very good meeting then after that with, by the way, some of the same people that I had met originally that basically ignored it. They came back, and the Hispanic Republican Conference got together with them, and we had a very positive meeting where they recognized what they always had recognized, that it was an unfortunate, if not offensive, portrayal of Latinos in the United States. The difference is that now they realize that we're not going to just play lip service, that we're actually willing to stand up. So they started making changes. And I'm less concerned about the short-term changes to that actual exhibit, even though that actually has happened as well. My concern was, if this is what it's going to look like, if this is going to be the portrayal of Latinos in the United States, as victims, as deserters, as traitors. Hell no.
Yes.
But I'm confident now, and everybody understands that we're watching, that attitudes have changed, and they realize now that they have to look at the Latino experience as it really is, not as maybe a handful of people wanted to portray. I really think that it was a handful of people wanting to use Latinos in the United States to frankly just criticize the United States.
Correct.
Well, I'm not willing to accept either one of those.
Yes, I saw the exhibit, not in person, but virtually, and I have to agree with what you guys were upset about. For me, as a Mexican American, was also kind of intriguing who had put this together. And my question to you was also, what strategies besides that show of force did you use when you were talking to these people? How did you change their minds besides defunding?
Unfortunately, we weren't able to get them to really even respond, in essence, right? In earnest, I should say, until, as you call it, we showed our force. Till then, it was basically, well, sorry, deal with it. And again, I was not willing to do that. You mentioned as a Mexican American, I don't care every part of that exhibit, which is, as you saw, a very small exhibit.
Yes.
It's hard. It was hard to, frankly, do something that really kind of anti-Hispanic in such a small exhibit. The part on Puerto Rico was offensive. The part on Cubans was offensive. The part about Mexico and Mexicans was offensive. Potentially the most offensive part, just to highlight one of them, was the portrayal of Hispanics in the U.S. military.
Yes.
Look, everybody knows. Well, not everybody, but Hispanics know. Latinos know. We all know. And anybody who knows about the Latino experience in the United States knows that, that Hispanics have been heroic in fighting for the United States, fighting with the United States from the beginning of this republic, including in the U.S. Revolutionary War, the American Revolutionary War.
Yes.
So they had just 4 examples. Only 4, because it's a small exhibit. 4 examples of Latinos in the military.
Let me
if you
jump
only have
in.
4 examples.
Let me jump in there real quick, because I read a lot about that position, mostly on the Republican side, that you guys really wanted that representation of the history in the military and how they have contributed to the formation of the Republic as such. I have to agree. But also I saw that lack of understanding on part of the museographers on why did we come here in the first place, all of these groups. I saw that there was not a mention of horrible dictators like Castro in Cuba and Chavez and all of that. Do you think it's important, though, to relate to those episodes that brought all the different groups of Latinos here, besides of what the Latinos did inside the U.S.?
Absolutely. Well, look, if they're going to mention Latin America, then mention Latin America.
Yes,
exactly. If they're not, that's a separate issue. But if they're going to talk about dictatorships in Latin America, which this small exhibit did, it's difficult to talk about dictatorships in Latin America and not mention the longest dictatorship in Latin America.
Absolutely.
The largest refugee crisis in the history of Latin America has been in Venezuela, what used to be the wealthiest country in South America that is now one of the poorest in the entire region, right?
Correct.
But if you're going to mention dictatorships, how do you mention dictatorships and not mention Cuba, Venezuela, Nicaragua, for God's sake? I think it's fair to mention past dictatorships as well. But if you're going to do that, it's very difficult then to not mention, again, the longest dictatorship in the hemisphere. But look, this was systematic of this entire exhibit. I was mentioning in the military, they only have 4 examples, right? You think about Latinos in the military, Los Borinqueneers, the most heroic Puerto Rican, all of them, by the way, highly decorated, all of them heroes. You think maybe they'd be mentioned. Or the fact that there are 60 Medal of Honor winners, 60 Medal of Honor winners that are Hispanic Americans. You can go on and on. Look, that phrase that we use all the time, damn the torpedoes, we use it all the time.
Yes.
You know that was a Latino in the Revolutionary War in the United States. Hispanics are not a little addition. We are, and from the beginning of this country, have been the backbone of American culture and I would argue of American heroism and
Yes.
sacrifice and success. So the first example of only four of Latinos in the military, they found an actual convicted deserter. And
Okay.
they make him look like a hero, a convicted deserter. Are you freaking kidding me?
That's
You have to
insane
work really, really hard
to
to
find it.
avoid mentioning all of the heroes,
Yeah.
and you have to find a convicted deserter. I and a group of us were not willing to just complain and nothing happened and do nothing about it.
Yeah.
Because we were willing to stand up. Now what you've seen is some changes to that exhibit, and I think you're going to see changes of attitude about what Latinos mean in the United States. We are not some really weird thing. We are the fiber, the
Yes.
backbone
Yes.
from the beginning of the United States of America.
That's very powerful. And also, I heard about, besides all that you're mentioning, that it's really true. I heard a couple of people saying that the mission, or one of the missions of the museum anyway, was to show other groups, being the white people or whoever, that the Latinos did not come here, that we were here all the time. When I heard that, I said, okay, that sounds good. But there's also, like you and me, people who came recently. What would you say is the real mission of this museum? To show another person, to show ourselves, to show everybody? What is it that we were trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think about museums in general, right? I mean, there are the experts, right, that go to do research in museums, but most people are not experts. Most people don't know much about the subject matter. And so, in some cases, it's the first explanation of whatever it is that they're going to go look at. If you're going to go to, um, Natural History Museum, for many people, it's they don't know much about dinosaurs and fauna and flora. So this is where they learn. So you would think that when you go, right, and when that museum becomes a reality, to the Latino Museum, that they would go to see the Latino experience, what we have done, what we have been, and what we are doing currently, right? And
Yes.
yes, the circumstances as to why people got here originally. You well mentioned, though, that there were Latinos that were here before the country was established. And so, which is why it was so unfortunate, if not, well, no, let me state it, offensive, that it portrayed Hispanics as frankly, as kind of losers, as victims only, as just, again, deserters, traitors.
Mm-hmm.
And for somebody that doesn't know and walks in there, whether you're from the United States to go to this museum or you're from another part of the world, and you go, well, let me look at the Latinos in the United States. Imagine if that's what they take back.
Yes.
That Latinos in the United States are victims. We haven't gotten anything done. We're deserters, and we hate this country. When in fact, as you and I have already mentioned, it's the backbone
Correct.
of the United States from the beginning, and it continues. Our communities, the diversity of our communities, continue to evolve and change
Yes.
and make this country the greatest country in the planet even greater. And so that's what I'm hoping people will take when they go see the museum, that they'll see the diversity, because it's a very diverse community, but more importantly, the greatness of what Latinos have done, continue to do, and the amazing contributions that Hispanics have done in this amazing country of ours.
When I hear you talk, my next question was, what would you say it's the thread that unites all this diversity of people, from Afro-Latinos to Jewish Latinos, from Cubans to Cuba to Venezuelans, etc. Besides the fact that we all came here looking for a new life and our love for country, which I think we all share, what would you say is the thread that unites all of these different races, all of these different religions, histories, backgrounds that compose our Hispanic group that I think has been imposed to us like a team, but you and I know that it's so diverse.
Yeah, but I think that you're right. There are some things that are that transcend the different Latino communities in the United States, right? One is love of God and faith. It's a very faith-driven community, and you see that everywhere in the country, by the way. Number two is just revere the family, loyalty and reverence to the family, and all that means. And lastly, great gratitude and patriotism
Yes.
to the United States of America. Look, you and I know the United States of America is made up of human beings. So there's nothing perfect other than God. But there is no better country, there ever has been a better country in the history of humanity. And Latinos in the United States are amazingly patriotic with also this extraordinary work ethic. And which is why it was to me so offensive to try to change that and show something that we're not.
Correct.
Now, are there, like with any community and any individual, there are bad apples, right? But if you look at the Latino community in the United States, again, I repeat myself, it has done so much for this country. It means so much for this country, and it is part of this country. You know, and one of the amazing things about the United States of America, which is if you were here before this country was here, right? Like some folks, Latinos in Texas and in Arizona, if you got here 4 generations ago, and you're a first, second, third generation born in the United States Latino, or from any country, or if you are just naturalized, you are just as American as George Washington and Jefferson and the founding fathers. That is a uniquely American issue.
Yes.
Because you and I have traveled around the world, and you know that in most countries, I don't care how many generations you've been there. If your descendants are from someplace else, you're always a foreigner. In the United States, no, we're all Americans, and so we recognize that. And again, when I speak to students in particular, I always ask the question. I said, look, you mentioned a different variety of Americans, right? Latino, Jewish Latino, Venezuelan, and Mexican. But even if you're not Latino, if you're an African American, if you're whatever you are, where else in the planet, today or any time in history, by the way, where else in the planet do people like you and me or anybody else have more chances, more opportunity, more freedom, or have less discrimination? Where else in the world does call it a minority, right, have better opportunities, less discrimination, more opportunity to just elevate yourself and your family than in this United States of America? And I would argue nowhere in Latin America, nowhere in Asia, nowhere in Europe.
No, nowhere.
This continues to be the greatest country in the history of humanity.
And that's why we aspire to be here. And I think you, among all, are the best example of this. Do you know where the museum will be located?
No, there are some potential properties on the mall, and that also requires legislation, and so all of these are going to be very difficult things to get done. The funding and the location for the building. I would argue that the funding is the least of the problems because you can get private funding. The location is going to be a big battle, and it still hasn't been settled where it's going to be, but the dream is to have it on the mall like we have all of the other Smithsonian museums.
Would you support the idea of having a Hispanic architect design the museum?
Well, you would. Are there not some amazing, right, Latino architects in this country? I think that's a no-brainer. That's
great. And also, you know what I was thinking? I mean, there's no discussion about Latino things without a little bit of drama. But one of the things that I think is more dramatic about our culture is the cuisine. Can you imagine what the food court is going to look like in that museum?
Right. Oh, look, the potential is just amazing, right? I mean, you think of all of the things that it should and could have, and so again, it's one of the reasons I've always been supportive. But as I mentioned, and we've had this conversation already at length, I do want to make sure that it adheres to the law, it adheres to the spirit of the law, and it also really, really shows just the amazing contributions of Hispanics in this great country of ours.
Yes, I'm very happy we spoke, Congressman, because I read so many things that wanted to make this a partisan issue, and I think it's beyond that. I think you have made it clear that it's about our identity, our history, and how we have been part of this great country. So I appreciate that a lot. Is there anything else that you could share with us about this project that is not yet available to the public?
Look, there's a long way to go still. It's still a very, very heavy lift. I agree with you, by the way, that if you look at the discussions and the debate on this issue, both Republican and Democrats, Latinos and not Latinos, who saw the exhibit, not everybody saw that exhibit, mentioned publicly that it was offensive, The difference, by the way, is that it took the Republicans to actually do something about it. But that's okay. That's okay. We got it done, and I'm proud that we got it done, and I'm proud of having been a supporter. And again, it's an uphill battle, so this is just the first hurdle of many. We have a lot of work to do, and but I'm confident that if we all stick together, if we all do if we don't do stupid things to shoot ourselves in the foot, we should be okay, and that should become a reality.
Hi, Congressman Mario Diaz Balart. It was a pleasure speaking to you. Thank you very much, and I hope we meet in that lobby of that great museum soon enough.
Hopefully, God willing. Thanks again. Good to see you.
Thank you, man. Bye-bye.